uppercut, uppercut, sonic boom.
This is going to be a hell of a video, guys. This is the brand new Asm Abakan. Now, it's taken a while to do this video because there is so much going on with this weapon. It is the strangest, most ambitious weapon that I've ever seen PUBG Mobile drop, and it's going to take a lot of explaining and a lot of talking to talk you through the meta, through the sensitivity issues it has, through just the whole 9 yards. So let's kick this off anyway before we go any further. If you would subscribe to the channel and like the videos, that would help me. These are the kind of videos I drop all day, every day of the week. So why not come along and join the ride, or join Patreon if you want to come and play in the live streams. The Abakan is, for all intents and purposes, an AN-94, which is well, Abakan is actually just the name of the project that the Russians used to find a replacement for the AK-47. And this runs a 5.56 round, but it looks exactly like an AK with the gas ejector or whatever it's called on the underside instead of on the top side. But it is a 5.56 gun, so it has 5.56 levels of bullet speed, which is really important. And that's probably the most valuable part of the 5.56 weaponry. If you've got 5.56 bullet speed, you can do all kinds of things with the gun. You can use it as a sniper, as a single tap. In this case, you have 3 firing modes, and they all have a place within the gun. And this is one of the issues with the gun. It's ambitious. They try to make this gun so many different things. It's got a burst mode that fires 2 shots that are very, very close together. So it's a mid-range burst mode sniper, which is a hard thing to use. It's got a full auto mode, which is the same rate of fire as a standard 5.56 AR. That's around every 0.094 seconds, giving you a time to kill, which is exactly the same as all the other 5.56 ARs. But the round is about 1 damage less than all the other 5.56 ARs. 39.9, not 40.9. The other issue you have is sensitivity for tap firing is based around the camera and then a little bit of ADS. Sensitivity for full auto is based around a little bit of camera and a lot of ADS. Sensitivity for burst is in the middle. So if you're doing custom sensitivity settings with this weapon, it's very difficult because you literally have 3 weapons in one. You've got a burst fire AR, you have a full auto AR, and you have a single tap sniper. The other thing that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I know this is me, it's not on the range, right? So you can't do the sensitivity settings on the range, which is super convenient where you can set all your sensitivity settings. You have to do this in game. Hopefully they will change it on the range later so that you can actually go to the range and use the Abakan and the MG3 and sort the sensitivity out. But as it stands now, that's not a possibility. And this can be difficult because people keep turning up and you have to keep trying to fight. And if you're firing in a game, people come and see you and start trying to kill you, and it gets to be a bit annoying. And then there's one other really crazy thing. It does less damage than an M416. So M416, 40.9, Abakan, 39.9. Has the same bullet speed. So it's firing out the end about the same kind of kinetic force. And yet its recoil is wildly above that of the M416, the SCAR-L, the AUG, all those kind of guns. And that means that it can actually be a very difficult weapon to control at any kind of mid-range spray. That's why you have the burst mode on the weapon. You want to be using burst mode like this in this kind of 50 meter to 60 meter and above kind of range. And it's super effective because that's the perfect kind of range for the gun. The problem is to set that up so that it's solid, you've got to completely ignore the recoil heavy auto mode. And that means your recoil is going to be very, very tough to control on one of those modes. And you say, well, I'll just use it for automatic fire then. Well, then why wouldn't you use a SCAR-L or an M416 or even an M762? Because all those weapons can do this. Whereas this is what you want to look at when it's at this range. Every time you hit like that, 2 rounds are hitting. So every time you hit, 2 rounds are hitting. Where this works really, really well is when you kind of got shots on someone, the first shot you take always being at 0. Look, this is a great example of what I'm talking about. That guy's just spamming an M416 at 100 meters. The Abakan can't do that. It can only go single tap, and its recoil is so high that its single tap isn't as effective. Whereas you use an M16A4, for instance, and you can get your recoil down to a super low level. So you might be running an Abakan and he might be running an M416, and they both have the same time to kill on full auto, but there's no way you can do the same things with the two guns. If anyone played PUBG Mobile back when the game started, you used to be able to mount an 8X on an M16A4 and run it as a secondary sniper rifle. And the first 2 rounds on the M16A4 acted exactly like the first 2 rounds on the Abakan do. They were very, very close together. They actually nerfed the arse out of the M16A4. Look at this recoil. The recoil is pretty freaking wild. It's very difficult to use in full auto. And it does less damage. There's no way around this. So you've got wild recoil, less damage. How do you make any use of it at all? Well, CQC is great, but this kind of range here is where it struggles. So you want to be using the burst mode in this kind of range, but not everyone is very good at directing traffic in burst mode and actually being successful with it. For a lot of people, tap firing is not something they've developed. And that's one of the reasons why you see people play M416s, because they can just spam M416s and they don't have to worry about ever learning how to tap fire and aim at the same time. M416 just solves those problems. The Abakan creates a problem, and people who aren't set up for it, namely pretty much everybody, are going to struggle to be effective with it. What does that mean? Well, on the one hand, I applaud PUBG Mobile for bringing a weapon out that's different, that gives you choices. And choices for me are what make the game interesting. I love using weapons that other people don't use and getting the most out of them. The Abakan is certainly one of those guns. But it's just not effective enough to drop. Like if you want a CQC weapon, there are much, much better options out there. The AKM now is basically the 7.62 Abakan, or the Abakan's the 5.56 AKM, and yet the AKM's time to kill is much, much lower, has a much higher alpha damage, and the recoil, to be honest, is easier on an AKM. This is the range you want to use it at, like that. But you could just use a 5.56 AR to full spray with a Scar L or even an M249, and like this guy, and you'd be better off. I like using the gun simply because I don't care a jot about rating. I don't care a zack about any of that. What I want to do is play the game and feel like there's choices that are hard and have to be made. But the Abakan is certainly not overpowered. I would recommend that this gun is going to get buffed. And I think the way that they'll buff it is either to make the burst fire even more accurate, or to make it have a heavier damage 5.56 round. Hell, if you made this like a 42 base damage 5.56 round, you'd have a real CQC 5.56 AR that has big recoil and then have a burst mode on it that could be used as a mid-range sniper, and it would make it a much more interesting choice for me. As it is, it's still a weapon that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to be using whenever I need it, but it won't be my primary choice. It'll just be the in-between weapon, the weapon you use when you're waiting for your Scar L or your barrel or your UMP or whatever your primary is, because running this in a sniper rifle really limits you in terms of your gameplay. And it's very hard to find the engagements. I'll show you another example. Oh, that guy, by the way, was not the guy that I thought. That's the guy that I thought I'd killed. I should have stuck around there. I'll show you an example of how fierce it is when you actually nail it. There's a bloke in the next clip over here. There's a bot, and he just clears the bot out with his super cannon. There's a bunch of crates and a Tesla at the back there, and he's looting. That's when it's nice, just like that. That is when it's nice. It is so brutal at like 60 meters if you get the first shot, because it's zero damage. I've talked about this before, but it's one of the reasons why the AKM has become so good now, in my opinion. The first shot for every weapon starts at 0. Every weapon. So your first M416 shot is at 0, and it does 40.9 base. Your first shot with an Abakan is at 0, and it's 2 shots, and together they do nearly 80 damage. So you see where I'm going with this? When it works incredibly well. When it doesn't work, it's a pile of poop tickets. And the skill of the player and the constant decision making and switching burst and single and full auto is a task that a lot of people will just find onerous and they won't stick around with. I hope you guys enjoyed what was, for me, a really entertaining weapon to trial out. The Asm Abakan. It's interesting, and I think they're going to tinker with it, and I think I'll probably have to do another video. I'm also going to do a comparison video in all the tap-fire weapons and get the Abakan in on that one. So until next time, look after yourselves, stay safe on the battlefield. Bye for now.